Let's acquire a superpower. Most of us have seen the X-Men, and we know the basic premise that unlike Peter Parker, who was bitten by radioactive uh, spider, or Dr. Bruce Banner, who um, got a bizarre dose of gamma radiation, the X-Men are born with a mutated gene, inferring and sometimes blatantly stating that this is humanity's next evolutionary step. Similarly, every complex life form on this planet is born with the capacity for empathy, although most of the time it is latent and hidden and underdeveloped. We have unique tissues in our brain that functions as mirror neurons, and their hub, their loci, their center is our anterior singular gyrus, or our seat of empathy. When it is completely damaged or non-accessed neurologically, we wind up with psychopathy, which is horrible. When it is fully integrated, we wind up with really healthy, well-adjusted adults, which sadly in this day and age is rare. But this superpower is inconvenient. See, as the term mirror neuron infers, we're able to feel what others feel, which means when something good happens to someone, we feel great. What it also means is when something bad happens to someone, we feel bad. So this is found in nature. This is natural, but due to the nature of our society, it's been proven that when people or any entity lives in peril, the empathy center stops lighting up and the fear and aggression center starts lighting up. So it can be successfully argued that late stage capitalism is undermining our potential, our empathetic potential. But it's been proven that when people are removed from perilous situations where they don't have to fight for basic survival, where they don't have to fight for food, shelter, clothing, medical care, education, employment, they can just use their talents for the benefit of others. They're able to access their latent potential. The more empathetic we are, the more difficult it is for us to commit violent crime, the more difficult it is for us to harm our fellow beings, the more difficult it is for us to act in an unsustainable manner, a manner unsustainable for our species, no less for our entire planet. So how do we access this? Well, here's the funny thing. Those who are given to being rigid, fearful, controlling, elitist, competitive, cryptic, and cruel are convinced that they can just force themselves to be empathetic, that they can just visualize themselves to being empathetic, that they can just frighten themselves to be empathetic, that they can just logic themselves to being empathetic. However, ironically, functional magnetic resonance imaging tests, fMRIs, have shown that the most efficient way to get the aggression and fear centers to stop lighting up and to get the empathy center to start lighting up is simply to practice mindfulness and meditation effectively for at least 5 minutes, approximately once every 12 hours or so. You do that, and in a very short time, you'll be a new person. I look forward to meditating with you after about 40 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School for more than 30 years. I've spent more than 8 hours a day studying and practicing in reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of Buddhism, so you won't have to. I play the Yoda to your Luke Skywalker so that you can easily and quickly become the person that your dog already thinks you are. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. The highest form of meditation is taught by one of the first reformers. Well, first of all, it was taught by the Buddha. He called it sati pasati and described it in terms of the 7 enlightenment factors. After about 11 centuries or so, two reformers of Buddhism, one Chinese and one, I think it's Afghani, resurrected it. The Afghani one, Rahe Vajra, was known in Tibet as Gaurab Dorje. And he taught that prayer is not necessary, ritual is not required. Now there's visualization or mantra. All we got to do is meditate, and that's cool. However, it's been my experience that my students are like sprinters who respond viscerally to the sound of a starter's pistol and the sight of a finish line. Similarly, they seem to do best if I begin and end every meditation with a short chant of loving intention, not to pray to a real or imagined entity, but to simply exercise our loving intention. That's it. That's it. So right now, let's chant to exercise. Let's perform a chant of empathetic bodhicitta and enthusiastic refuge. Our first recitation is going to be literal, and we're going to set it to a triplet chant together. May I liberate all beings from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging by relying on thee, Buddha's example, instructions, and students. These 3 words are so useful that they've earned the metaphoric nickname, the 3 wish-fulfilling jewels. For our final chant, we're going to be more concise and more figurative. We're going to set this recitation to the bookend chant together. May I liberate all beings by relying on the 3 jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the 3 jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the 3 jewels. Mindfulness and meditation are known by many names, including Sati, Pasati, Zen, Proto-Zen, Chan, Dhyana, Mahamudra, Mahasandhi, Ati Yoga, Dzogchen, and Trekcho. Let's begin with mindfulness. Every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we access our sympathetic nervous system ensconced within the thoracic region of our spinal cord, which is wired not for active concentration, but instead to merely perceive and to do so vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. as is illustrated by the inhalation's 12-syllable recitation, perceiving this very turbulent play of mind. There are fools out there who insist that mind is not supposed to be playful, it's supposed to be mellow. But those guys are boneheads. Guys, we all know that our minds evolved to perceive sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like, as well as emote, intend, reason, recall, and imagine. The question is not whether those things happen, but whether we have the courage to notice them. And once we do, what do we do with them? And the answer is we meditate upon them. But how does that work? Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we access our parasympathetic nervous system, ensconced within both the lumbar region of our spinal cord, as well as the tippy top of its cervical region, thus helping us to physically relax and mentally release, as is explained in the exhalation recitation, relaxing into mind's non-graspable nature. Now, folks who are literal-minded, folks who are rigid and fearful and controlling, look at the phrase non-graspable and think that it's a literal statement, and they try to force themselves to believe or superstitiously believe or give themselves over to the skullduggery, trying to convince themselves and others that all minds are not graspable. Fortunately, most of us were taught in the 4th grade that not all statements are literal. Many are metaphoric, or many are figurative, similes, metaphors, and hyperbole. So this is how it works. Every time we relax into our exhalation, all that we perceive during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast, empty void. It could feel as if it was as non-graspable as the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless day, that no matter how much we try to reach that blue sky, we never pull back any blue. Hence, it's non-graspable. And so this is the foundation from which blooms the bouquet of Buddhist metaphors, such as birthlessness, selflessness, and deathlessness, as well as emptiness. When we were kids, one of our caregivers probably bolted on 2 training wheels onto our bicycle. Our training wheel this morning is going to be the somewhat ungainly 12-syllable exercise. Together, right now, let us meditate as transformatively as Yoda on Dagobah under the guidance of the Force Ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn. And if you've just joined me, welcome aboard. Remember, the moment you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or their application, type your question in great detail in the chat window. we can pretend to remove the first of two training wheels and transition from a 12-syllable set of exercises to a 3-syllable set of exercises, silently and mentally reciting notice this as we inhale, and silently and mentally reciting relaxing as we exhale. If you were feeling a super strong experience, you can harness that experience through the use of a 3-syllable label. Our job is not to be perfectionistic about labels or to chase labels or to concentrate on labels. But sometimes you may find it beneficial. For instance, if you're feeling really cranky and you don't want to be a butthead, then it can be useful to silently and mentally meditate upon emotion relaxing. If you're feeling strong physical discomfort or strong physical experience, sensation relaxing. If you find yourself rehearsing a conversation, cognition relaxing. Let us remove the final of two training wheels and transition from a 3-syllable exercise to its 1-syllable counterpart. When we do, we replace the phrase sensation with form, the word emotion with feel. We replace the word recollect with then, and imagine with dream. But our fundamental exercise during our inhalation is to silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this, and during each exhalation to silently and mentally recite the 1-syllable verb ease, which functions as a synonym for relax. Together, let's chant a passage from the first Dzogchen treatise, composed by Prahevajra. I pay homage to the Bhagavan glorious Vajrasattva. The total space of Vajrasattva is the ever good and immense ultimate dimension of phenomena. Being the pure total path that liberates all, it does not arise or cease, it does not think of anything. So we're not here to contemplate, we're not here to believe or disbelieve, we're not here to control our experience, but to simply notice and release. Being love and thus thoroughly accomplished, it does not practice great compassion. Being great, the profound qualities of greatness need not be praised. There is a famous Mahayana Shastra known as the Bodhicharya Vatara, or the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life. And in it, we're taught of how awesome compassion is. But the great irony is we are already born wired for empathy. We don't have to force this. The highest love is spontaneous and uncontrived. The test of our mindfulness and meditation is not whether or not we have thoughts, but during our meditation breaks, how empathetic we are and how centered and spontaneous that love behaves. So when you hear ambient noise in the background, it's not your enemy. It's a tool you can use to enhance your meditation. With the words here, ease. But Lama do not move the authentic condition, since self-originated wisdom is beyond searching. In liberating itself, it also shows the path of liberation. We're wired thusly. Every time we inhale, we notice things, vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. Every time we exhale, we're wired to physically relax and mentally release. We do not release because we've had an intellectual epiphany. We release because that's what we're wired to do. And if we're very fortunate, we get out of our own way and allow ourselves to do that. Therefore, wisdom comes not from contemplation, but from merely practice, from merely vulnerability and relaxation. When and if you feel you see a light show behind your eyelids, you can work with CEs. A light, the presence of a light show is not a acquittal. The absence of a light show is not an indictment. Things just happen. Use them. The great elements or the Bhagavan that exists by nature in all things. However wrongly it may be convinced, liberation originates from oneself and not elsewhere. So, in terms of Buddhist Tantra, Bhagavan simply is our deity or Yadam, or is simply a metaphor of reconciling the two truths of conventional perception and ultimate release. So, in terms of the 4 or 5 elements of the Iron Age, that would be with the air's experience of spaciousness, yet non-graspability. Fire's experience of warmth, yet non-graspability. We experience water as wet, yet non-graspable. We experience earth as solid, yet non-graspable. We experience wind as dynamic, yet non-graspable. So here's the great irony. We can be thick and slow and dull. We can be a glazed-eyed, slack-jawed, knuckle-dragging mouth breather and still become a Buddha, simply by noticing and relaxing in harmony with our breathing. If you struggle with tinnitus, you can actually harness tinnitus simply with the phrase, hear, ease. The wisdom of greatness is difficult to find. It is realized through prajna and method. Though it could be said to depend on something else, real bliss originates from oneself. So this is a radical teaching. So here's something really, really weird. As the Buddha lay dying, as recorded in the Mahayana Nirvana Sutra, the Buddha explained, I have taught with an outstretched arm and an open hand, keeping no secrets. But people masquerading as the wise are rigid enough and fearful enough and controlling enough and elitist enough to do the opposite of the Buddha and keep secrets because it makes them feel important and powerful and in control. People, and if you go on Reddit and look at the Dzogchen groups, people are talking about empowerment this or permission that. You don't need a permission to read the Buddha's teachings. You don't need a teacher. You don't need a scripture. All you need is your brain and your body, and you're good to go. And if you're alive, that's nice too. So whether what you want is wisdom or whether what you want is bliss, we don't need an outside source. Sometimes they can be beneficial. Sometimes they can be helpful. We don't need a surrogate parent. We don't need a slave driver. All we need is the teachings. And if someone tells you you don't have permission to practice these elite teachings for special people, thank them for your time. Thank them for their time and get out of Dodge. Because this person is neither wise, nor peaceful, nor loving. The great miracle is not difficult to qualities and capabilities. Though subtle, through subtle understanding of the authentic condition immediately arises for oneself. What is this great miracle? Well, in Buddhist parlance, there are the mundane attainments and the supramundane attainments. Mundane attainments are basically, manifesting freedom from bad things and abundance of good things. The Jedi mind control, mind trick, and the ability to perform exorcisms. The ultimate attainment is simply mastery of the Eightfold Path, simply mastery of love and letting go. And we are all capable of this. This is not for special people. We can all do this. This doesn't come from an outside source. This doesn't come from a blessing or a mantra or an energy technique. It comes from within ourselves. Meditation is relaxing without seeking, in the Dharmata's mastery of awareness and letting go that does not appear visibly. If one actively searches either for the Dharmata or something in it, the natural condition will never manifest. So meditation is not concentration, meditation is not contemplation, it's just watching, it's just perceiving and relaxing. Without agenda, just surfing the present moment. The supremely sacred reality cannot be heard through the sense of hearing. Likewise, it cannot be expressed by the tongue, not even in the slightest. So all this means is that it's not secret because someone keeps it secret. It's secret because it's subtle. It cannot be explained, it can only be experienced through sitting and noticing and relaxing. If you feel itchy all of a sudden, sensation, relaxing, or form ease. The suffering of beings is the bodhisattva. Take two. The suffering of beings is the bodhicitta, or mindset of enlightenment, that fully manifests while pervading all, without ever being moved it up by equally, just as the reaches of space. So, that which we experience is not a hindrance. And has the potential to actually empower enlightenment itself, simply by noticing it and releasing. That which is the equality of all distinctions is conceived by saying it is karma. Were it really under the power of karma, self-originating wisdom would not exist. So it's not our job to be fatalistic. It's not our job to concern ourselves with what some people call spooky karma. Instead of asking why has this happened, just focus on what is happening. Now, it's very easy to fall into the concern of saying, if I do that, won't I be a victim? Won't I be just a bump in the log? No. The fringe benefit of meditation and mindfulness is love's centered spontaneity. when our choices and our utterances and our actions flow from love's centered spontaneity, life is a heaven on earth. The causes, the vajra, as are the secondary conditions. Never having been born, it cannot be destroyed. Since it is the Bodhi essence that exists from the beginning, the ultimate dimension is not moved by effort of thoughts. So Vajra here is a synonym for Buddha nature. Back in the Iron Age, that might have sounded mystical, but in the Silicon Age, we recognize our Buddha nature simply our sympathetic nervous system, the seat of mindfulness, our parasympathetic nervous system, the seat of meditation, and our anterior cingulate gyrus, the seat of empathy. Birthlessness and deathlessness are simply metaphors of non-graspability, as we discussed previously. So we do not have a Buddha nature because we try really hard. We're born with it. We're born with the ability to notice and release and to love. We're born with those abilities. It's universal in the animal kingdom. In the proper circumstances, I've seen carnivores be loving. I've seen herbivores be loving. I've seen mammals be loving. I've seen lizards be loving. Meditative stability of supreme quality. Being real meditative stability is beyond thought. Without applying thought or purifying in accordance with nature, from thought itself wisdom springs forth. So it's not our job to repress thought or indulge thought or debate with thought. It's our job simply to notice and release. Honing the expression, the gateway to the subtle. They seek the path by isolating the mind, maintaining isolation in a secluded place. If we examine well, this is conceptual meditation. So it's not our job to stop our mind from perceiving or thinking or any of its duties. It's not our job to isolate ourselves from external stimuli. If you're an OG like myself, you might remember the rock opera Tommy, where they had sunshades and earplugs and a cork for the mouth, and the idea was they were supposed to it represented isolating this meditation through sensory deprivation. The Buddha taught the opposite of that. The first enlightenment factor is mindfulness. We get to be mindfulness of the outer world and the inner world in a manner that is vulnerable and passive and visceral and most of all, random. They coined the terms cause and effect, but both virtues and negativities dissolve completely. They say we will get out of this world and nurture supreme complacency and accepting and rejecting. Morality that is governed by desire for reward and fear of punishment is not morality. The highest morality is love, spontaneous and uncontrived. That's it. People speak of renouncing various things that they could get out of samsara. Well, what if samsara was simply our perception of the conventional? What if nirvana was simply our relaxing into the ultimate? What if the two were as close as our next breath? What if the renunciation is not renunciation of certain acts, but renunciation of discrimination and simply noticing whatever comes up, regardless of how we feel about it, and releasing whatever comes up, regardless of how we feel about it, and being kind to whoever enters our sphere of awareness, regardless of who they are or what they've done. To be kind to a Albert Schweitzer or to be kind to an Adolf Hitler, whoever crosses our path. Attachment and non-attachment are the path of words, and something in the middle is the same like an echo. So, there are many, so some of the popular synonyms in Buddhism are as non-graspable as a mirage, as non-graspable as an echo. So we're told that attachment and non-attachment and everything in between is non-graspable. So many people chase after one or chase after the other as opposed to just sitting, being put, and letting experiences come and go without chasing them. I love watching videos of other people's kitty cat misadventures on Instagram. And the quickest way to get injured, the quickest way to get an injury from a kitty cat is to give it affection when it doesn't want it. Cats are funny. They are big on their own boundaries, but they don't give a shit about our boundaries. So I think every boy in elementary school and junior high should have a kitty cat, so they learn to respect other people's boundaries and learn that there are consequences for violating other people's boundaries, other entities' boundaries. But if you sit in a house with a kitty cat, the cat will ignore you at some time. The cat will get zoomies around you at one point, and at some point eventually the cat will approach you and demand love now. Similarly, we do not pick and choose what we feel and when we feel it. We're just sitting and observing what comes and what goes, regardless of what label we slap upon it. Now, this is a foretaste of one of the more radical teachings of this text. The key to non-duality is not lying to ourselves about what we feel, but being gentle with our labeling. So we don't have to label something as suffering. We don't have to label something as happiness. We can just refer to it as emotion. And doing so helps us to process it without getting all neurotic about it. Attachment, anger, and ignorance. Take 2. Attachment, anger, and ignorance arise from the path of enlightenment's total Bodhi. Feeling the full spectrum of human emotions is not an indictment and means we're practicing mindfulness correctly. Oh, excuse me. The five sense objects of enjoyment are said to be the ornament of the Dharma Datta dimension. Pleasure is neither good nor bad, it simply is. There are visual enjoyments, there are auditory enjoyments, there are physical enjoyments, there are gustatory enjoyments, there are olfactory enjoyments, there are mental enjoyments. The presence or absence of those enjoyments does not a failure or a success make. It's just grist for the mill. So James wrote, "Hi Lama, when I inhale I keep saying this, but there nothing I think I am getting there." I'm not sure what your question is. I'm sorry. Sometimes words are inadequate. But if you could try again, I will happily read your next message. Sometimes the generic works best. Sometimes the specific works best. That's why I give you many tools, so you can use the right tool for the right job in the right moment. At first, you may feel clumsy, and in time you will get better at it. Let us seal our practice with a bit of the old chanting. Beginning with kind ethics and concluding with the four immeasurables. May all beings practice of kind communication, conduct, and calmness with spontaneous and uncontrived. James writes, just a statement about how my mind's eye during inhalation is as empty as my wallet. Nice. Nice. Good simile. I like that. May everyone be free from misery, may everyone be happy, may no one be separated from the happiness, may everyone have balance from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging freed. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel if you wish. In approximately 10 2/3 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's evening meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, this is the way.